Hello and welcome to another video. Today we'll be taking a look at the Yalta Conference from 1945. We'll take a look at the historical context, participants and venue, some key agendas and decisions, the political dynamics and tensions, outcomes and consequences, as well as some historiographical perspectives, controversies and criticism, legacy and cultural impact, and last of all, some books and quotes. Let's start off with the historical context. The Yalta Conference, held from February 4th to 11th, 1945, took place against the backdrop of World War II's final stages. The Allied forces were advancing on all fronts, and the imminent defeat of Nazi Germany shaped the need for post-war planning. Yalta followed earlier conferences, including the Tehran Conference in 1943, where the Allies began to outline their vision for the post-war world. It built on these discussions and aimed to address outstanding issues regarding Europe's future and the structure of post-war international relationships. Participants and venue. The conference was attended by the leaders of the Allied powers: Franklin D. Roosevelt from the United States, Winston Churchill from the United Kingdom, and Joseph Stalin from the Soviet Union. The meetings were held at the Livadia Palace in Yalta, Crimea, chosen due to its proximity to the Soviet front and Stalin's preference for meeting on Soviet soil. Key agendas and decisions. The Allies agreed on the division of Germany into 4 occupation zones controlled by the United States, the United Kingdom, the Soviet Union, and France. This division was aimed at preventing Germany from starting another war and ensuring demilitarization. Berlin was also divided into 4 sectors, mirroring the overall division of Germany, setting the stage for the latter Berlin blockade and airlift during the early Cold War. The establishment of the United States was affirmed, with a primary focus on maintaining international peace and security. The Big Three agreed on the inclusion of the permanent members of the Security Council, each having veto power. Stalin agreed to the reorganization of Poland's borders, which would result in Poland gaining territory from Germany in the west while ceding land to the Soviet Union in the east. The new borders were based on the Oder-Neisse line. The leaders agreed that liberated European countries would hold free elections to establish governments reflecting the people's will, though this commitment was contentious and later became a point of Cold War friction. Stalin agreed to join the war against Japan within 3 months of Germany's surrender in exchange for territorial gains in the Far East, including South Sakhalin and the Kuril Islands. The conference addressed the issue of reparations, with agreements that Germany would pay reparations primarily through forced labor, industrial equipment, and resources, rather than cash payments. Political dynamics and tensions. Roosevelt aimed to secure Soviet participation in the United States and the war against Japan, while balancing this with his commitment to self-determination for Eastern European countries. Churchill was focused on maintaining British influence in Europe and ensuring a balance of power that would counteract Soviet dominance in Eastern Europe. Stalin sought to secure Soviet strategic interests in Eastern Europe, ensure a sphere of influence to create a buffer zone against potential future invasions, and gain territorial concession in the Far East. Outcomes and consequences. The Yalta Conference laid the groundwork for the Cold War by establishing spheres of influence and creating the conditions for East-West tensions. Disagreements over the implementation of free elections and Soviet actions in Eastern Europe led to growing distrust between the Allies. The division of Germany eventually led to the formation of the Federal Republic of Germany, West Germany, and the German Democratic Republic, East Germany, symbolizing the broader East-West divide. The Soviet Union solidified its control over Eastern Europe, leading to the establishment of communist governments and the eventual creation of the Eastern Bloc. Historiographical perspectives. Early Western historians often criticized Yalta for conceding too much to Stalin and argued that it paved the way for Soviet dominance in Eastern Europe. Some historians suggest that Roosevelt and Churchill had limited options given the military realities of the time, and argue that Yalta represented a pragmatic approach to complex geopolitical challenges. Modern interpretations consider Yalta as a reflection of the realpolitik and the shifting balance of power at the end of World War II, emphasizing the strategic and diplomatic constraints faced by all participants. Controversies and criticism. The promise of free elections in Eastern Europe became a major point of contention, as many Western critics argued that Stalin never intended to allow genuine democratic processes, leading to accusations of betrayal. The redrawing of Poland's border and the subsequent Soviet influence over Polish politics were particularly controversial, as many Poles felt abandoned by the Western Allies. The use of forced labor and the stripping of industrial assets from Germany as reparations were criticized for their ethical implications and their impact on post-war recovery, legacy, and cultural impact. Yalta became a symbol of the beginning of the Cold War and is often cited in discussions of post-war diplomacy and the origins of the East-West conflict. The conference has been referenced in political discourse as a cautionary tale about the dangers of negotiating with authoritarian regimes and the complexities of wartime alliances. In Soviet and later Russian historiography, Yalta is portrayed as a moment of Soviet diplomatic strength and strategic foresight. Now for some books and quotes. Yalta, The Price of Peace by S.M. Plocki provides a detailed account of the Yalta Conference, analyzing the negotiations and the long-term impact. The Second World War, Volume 6, Triumph and Strategy, by Winston S. Churchill. It offers Churchill's perspective on the events leading up to and including the Yalta Conference. Roosevelt and Stalin, The Failed Courtship, by Robert Nisbet. It explores the relationship between Roosevelt and Stalin and its influence on the outcomes of the conference. From Roosevelt to Truman, Potsdam, Hiroshima, and the Cold War, by Wilson D. Miscampbell. It examines the transition from Roosevelt to Truman and how the decisions at Yalta influenced post-war politics. The Yalta Conference, World War II's Diplomatic Turning Point, by Mark A. Stoller. It analyzes the significance of the Yalta Conference in the context of World War II and the emerging Cold War. Yalta represented not only a diplomatic triumph for Stalin, but also the beginning of a divided Europe. S. M. Plocki. I felt that the personal relationship with Stalin was worth a lot. I just have a hunch that Stalin is not that kind of a man. Franklin D. Roosevelt. What we need is a European settlement that will ensure our control and guarantee our safety. Winston Churchill. The problem of Poland was a microcosm of the larger struggle for influence and the security that would define the Cold War. Robert Nisbet. The agreements at Yalta reflected the harsh realities of power politics in the closing days of World War II. Mark A. Stoller. That was all for today. Thank you for listening.